Thank you so much, David, for the very nice introduction and for asking me this research question. And firstly, it's an honor for me to be a part of this event and to share the virtual space alongside our experts. And I would like to extend my greetings to all the experts in the panel here, and also all the experts in the audience and to all the interested audience. And with that note, I would like to start answering the question through a short form of a presentation, which I share in a short moment. And I hope now everyone could see my presentation. And in this presentation, I'm going to tell you what we know from academia that the companies are doing to cope with the financial constraints in their supply chain, especially when it comes to the financial constraints that the supply chain partners are facing. Let's have a look at them. And in the first part, what I have formulated is the framework of the methods which the companies are using alongside the literatures which refer them often and some industry examples. And we have identified so far there are 9 financial methods that are available for the companies. And I will take you through each one of them now. And before that, a short note. The examples mentioned here, the industrial ones, are just only one mentioned over here. But I know that the expertise over here know a lot of examples, and we can make it an option to discuss it widely in our networking break and also in the networking receptions to know more about it. And with that note, I would like to start with the first content, and which is a trade credit. And the trade credit is a financial method that the supplying companies allow the buying companies to have a deferred payments. How they do is based on the mutual agreement, which is called in terms of the payment terms. And here the buying companies will have an option to improve their working capital. So, but this trade credit is different from the rest of the methods in a sense that the trade credit is an option provided by the upstream suppliers to the downstream customers. Whereas in other techniques, we focus more on the upstream financial support provided by the buying companies to the supplying companies. And in that categories, I would like to explore you through the traditional factoring method. The traditional factoring is a methodology in which the supplying company sells their accounts receivable, which they get from the buyer, to a third party. The third party can be a bank or a finance providers. So how they get the money is based on their credit rating in this case. And if the same process, if that is initiated by the buyer and allow the supplying company to use their credit rating to get the money, we call the same thing as reverse factoring. And there is also, it is not complete, and sometimes the buying companies, they integrate with the platform providers to onboard a lot of companies, and they create a platform, and this process is called the supply chain finance. And there is one thing common between the factoring and reverse factoring process along with the supply chain finance, in a sense that these techniques provide the financial support to the supplying companies after the physical shipment of the goods. And we also have some other techniques where the supplier could potentially receive the financial supports even before the goods have been shipped to them. Let's have a look at some of them. And the first in our list in that case is advance payment. So in the advance payment, the buying companies pay the supplying companies advance for their orders. So by doing so, the supplying company has enough finance for right from their procurement and to start the production all the way through, so that they can ensure timely and also like without the default delivery to the buying company. And then we have the commercial bank loan, which is very much obvious across all the supply chains. It is very common. And then in this case, the companies pledge their asset to get financing from the bank and then start financing their needs. And we also have some more techniques, and that is called traditional purchase order financing. And in this category, the companies, instead of pledging the assets, they pledge the purchase order from the buying company. So on doing that, the bank will provide them the loan, and then they can meet the financial needs. And if the same process is sometimes backed by the buyer, and what the buyer do is the buyer provides the debt guarantee to the bank by taking off some portion of the supply risk from the bank. And this process is called the buyer-backed purchase order financing. And this is not complete. We also have the buyer direct financing. In this category, the buyer directly lends the money to the supplying company, and there is no intermediate bank involved. And there are some companies which are lending billions of dollars in these categories. And last but not the least, we have the buyer intermediate financing, which sounds pretty much similar to this supply chain financing, in a sense that the buyer intermediates with the third party provider to facilitate the financial needs for the suppliers. But there is a difference in buyer intermediate financing. The buyer actually helps the supplier to get the loan. It is not on the accounts receivable. That's the main difference over here. And now that we had a look into the overview of what the financial methods are, and now I would like to take you through the next part of the session where we could draw the relationship on how these financial methods have impact on the buyers and also on the suppliers. So what basically we do is we measure the benefit of the supplier in terms of the timing of the delivery along the horizontal line by keeping the goods delivery as the reference point, which differentiate the post-shipment and pre-shipment strategies. And on the other hand, on the vertical line, we keep the risk for the buyers, which is ranging from low to high. So buyers basically aim to mitigate the risk in the process. That is the objective of the buyer. And now that we map the techniques onto the scale, the position of the financial methods represents the risk, what it holds to the buyer, and also the timing of delivery for the suppliers. And the bubble size here represent the risk it imposed to the third party, maybe bank or the finance provider. And what you could see now is from the graph, you could see a trend that the post-shipment financing strategies like trade credit and factoring and reverse factoring, they impose low risk on the buyers. But whereas, on the other hand, they have late timing of support for the suppliers. On the other hand, we have this pre-shipment strategies. Most of them, they impose high risk for the buyers, but they could timely support the suppliers. So there we could find a trade-off in this process. And the trend is that the risk is mitigates as we travel along the line of the delivery after the shipment process. So the risk mitigates for the buyers, with some exception, and the exception being the purchase out of financing, which pose low risk for the buyers, and also the supplier could get early payment. But the problem here is the third party or the bank has more risk in the process. So yeah, this is what we know from in academia, that the how these the different financing works. And I'm happy to hear from the experts their opinion on how they tackle practically the financial distress in the supply chain. And thank you for giving me this opportunity, and looking forward for the further session.